The surgery bay smelled like antiseptic and hope. Dr. Alan Reed's hands moved with practiced precision through the Tullian child's chest cavity, repairing damage from a mining accident that should have killed her hours ago. Around him, the medical team worked in synchronized silence, each person knowing their role without needing instructions. The child's 3 hearts beat in staggered rhythm under his fingertips, a biological marvel that still amazed him after 5 years aboard the UHMS Florence. "Suture," he said quietly, and the instrument appeared in his palm before he finished speaking. His surgical nurse, a Graven named Toles, anticipated everything. They had saved 43 lives together this month alone, 43 souls who would have died in the frontier colonies without a hospital ship willing to venture into the disputed territories. Through the observation window, Alan could see other operating rooms running similar miracles. The Florence was not a warship. It carried no weapons, no armor worth mentioning. Every cubic meter of space was dedicated to saving lives, regardless of species, politics, or ability to pay. The massive vessel bore universal medical insignia on all sides, markings that were supposed to mean sanctuary under every galactic law ever written. "Doctor, her second heart is stabilizing," Toles reported, her translator rendering her clicking speech into smooth English. "The repair is holding." Alan allowed himself a small smile. Another one saved. Another family that would not receive the worst news imaginable. He glanced at the monitor showing the child's parents in the waiting area, their blue skin pale with worry. In an hour, he would tell them their daughter would live. That moment, seeing hope return to terrified faces, was why he had left Earth's comfortable hospitals for this aging ship in the middle of nowhere. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Hannah Cortez appeared in the doorway, still in surgical scrubs from her own operation. "Beautiful work, Alan. When you finish, we have 3 more incoming. Freighter collision near the asteroid belt." "We'll be ready," Alan replied. This was the rhythm of life on the Florence. Crisis after crisis, life after life, stitching the universe back together one patient at a time. The universe had other plans. Alarms shrieked through the ship with a sound Alan had only heard during drills. Tolles's hands froze mid-suture. The lights flickered, then steadied, then flickered again. On the monitor, the child's vitals spiked as the anesthesia system wavered. "What's happening?" Alan demanded, fighting to keep his voice calm. Panic killed patients faster than injuries. The answer came as a shudder that ran through the entire ship, followed by an explosion somewhere distant. The Florence lurched. Instruments clattered to the floor. The child on the table started sliding before Toles grabbed the edges, holding her steady. "We're under attack," someone screamed in the corridor. "All hands to escape pods." Under attack. The words made no sense. Hospital ships were never attacked. It was the one universal law that every species respected. You could hate your enemies, wage total war, commit any atrocity, but you did not fire on medical vessels. It was civilization's last line, the boundary between warriors and monsters. Another explosion, closer this time. The lights died. Emergency lighting bathed everything in red. Hannah rushed back in, her face twisted with disbelief and rage. "Dominac's warships," she said. "They're not responding to our identification signals. They're just killing us." Alan looked down at the Tullian child, still open on the table, still trusting him to save her. Around them, the ship was dying. He could feel it in the way the deck plates vibrated wrong, in the distant screams, in the smell of burning plastic invading the surgical suite. "We have to evacuate," Hannah said. "Now, Alan. I can't leave her like this. She'll die." "We all die if we stay." Hannah grabbed his shoulder. "Toles, seal what you can. We have maybe 2 minutes." Toles worked with desperate speed, her 4 hands moving in a blur. Alan helped where he could, knowing it was not enough, knowing this child deserved better than a rushed patch job before fleeing. Through the windows, he saw medical staff running, carrying patients who could be moved, staying with those who could not. The observation window exploded inward. Toles threw herself over the child as glass became shrapnel. Alan felt something hot slice across his shoulder. Hannah was already pulling them toward the door, screaming at them to move. In the corridor, chaos reigned. A graven doctor tried to wheel a patient toward the escape pods. The ceiling collapsed on them both. A human nurse Alan had shared lunch with yesterday lay against the wall, staring at nothing. Smoke burned his lungs. The ship screamed around them, metal tearing, bulkheads failing. Hannah pushed them into an escape pod already crowded with survivors. A young engineer named Paul, 2 civilian patients. Toles climbed in last, cradling the Tullian child against her chest. "Hannah, come on." Alan reached for her. She smiled at him, sad and certain. "Someone has to launch you. Pods don't auto-release when the ship's still fighting to live." "No, there has to be another way." The pod door sealed. Through the small window, Alan watched Hannah's hand hover over the launch control. Behind her, the corridor filled with flame. She slammed the button. The pod shot into space like a bullet. Through the rear viewport, Alan watched the Florence die. Dominac's warships, dark and predatory, circled the hospital ship like sharks. They fired again and again into a vessel that had never threatened anyone. Escape pods scattered like seeds in the wind, and the warships hunted them too, destroying the helpless as they fled. The Florence broke in half. Atmosphere vented in glittering clouds. Bodies tumbled into the void. 847 people had lived on that ship. Doctors, nurses, engineers, patients. People who had dedicated themselves to healing. Alan activated the pod's emergency recorder with shaking hands. His voice sounded hollow in the small space. "This is Dr. Alan Reed of the United Human Medical Ship Florence. We were attacked without warning by Dominac's forces. They knew what we were. They didn't care. This is testimony. This is truth. This is murder." Toles wept silently, still holding the child who might not survive without proper medical care. Paul stared at his hands, covered in someone else's blood. The 2 patients said nothing, shock stealing their voices. 3 days later, a human patrol cruiser found them drifting. By then, Alan had recorded everything he could remember. Every name, every face, every moment of those last terrible minutes. When they told him the final count, 847 confirmed dead, something inside him crystallized into diamond-hard resolve. The galaxy would know what happened here. The guilty would face justice. The dead would be honored. He did not know yet about Nina Walsh, or Protocol Sanctuary, or how one hospital ship's destruction would change warfare itself. He only knew that silence was not an option. Forgetting was not possible. The Florence had died trying to heal. Alan Reed would live to ensure that sacrifice meant something. 6 months felt like 6 years. Alan had tried returning to normal medical work at a colony station, but nothing felt normal anymore. Every patient reminded him of someone who died on the Florence. Every surgery brought back the memory of that Tullian child, wondering if she had survived. The nightmares came whether he slept or stayed awake. The Galactic Council had condemned the attack in the strongest possible terms, which meant absolutely nothing. The Dominac's empire denied responsibility, claiming the Florence was smuggling weapons to rebels. Convenient lies, impossible to disprove when all the evidence had burned in space. The galaxy's outrage lasted exactly 2 news cycles before everyone moved on to the next crisis. Alan could not move on. The message arrived on a day that felt like drowning. He was processing discharge papers for a patient when his communicator chimed with an encrypted signal. The text was brief. "I have proof. Meet me at Anchor Point Spaceport Bay 17. Come alone. A friend of the lost." He should have reported it to authorities. Should have ignored it as a trap or a scam. Instead, Alan booked passage on the next transport, because drowning men grab any rope thrown their way, even ones that might be made of knives. Anchor Point was a chaotic mess of legitimate trade and less legitimate everything else. Bay 17 sat in the station's older section, where the air recyclers wheezed and the lights flickered constantly. Alan found a woman waiting beside a cargo container, young and nervous, her eyes scanning the crowd like prey watching for predators. "Dr. Reed," she extended a hand. "Nina Walsh, thank you for coming." She looked unremarkable, casual clothes worn by millions, brown hair pulled back in a practical style. Nothing about her suggested she was about to crack Alan's understanding of the universe wide open. "You said you have proof," Alan said, skipping pleasantries. "Proof of what exactly?" Nina glanced around, then pulled a data pad from her bag. "Proof that the Florence attack was deliberate. Proof of who ordered it. Proof that 847 people died to eliminate one target." Alan's throat went dry. "Show me." The data scrolled past his eyes in damning detail. Classified Dominax military communications. Orders signed by High Commander Drax himself. Target assessment files. The name jumped out at him. Callas, a graven diplomat receiving treatment for radiation poisoning aboard the Florence. Callas had possessed evidence of Dominax war crimes on 3 colony worlds. Rather than risk a public arrest and trial, Drax had chosen to erase him and everyone nearby. "Where did you get this?" Alan whispered. "I stole it from my former employer." Nina's voice carried shame and defiance in equal measure. "I was a data analyst for Dominax Intelligence, low level. I saw these communications and realized what they meant, what they had done." "You're a spy." "I was a junior analyst who made copies and ran." Nina met his eyes. "I'm telling you this so you understand. I worked for them. I processed their reports. I never questioned what they were doing until the Florence, until I saw the casualty list and knew my government had murdered healers." Alan wanted to hate her, wanted to rage at anyone connected to the Dominax, but her hands shook as she held the data pad. Her voice cracked when she said murdered healers. Pain recognized pain. "Why me?" he asked. "Why not take this to the Galactic Court, the media?" "Because courts are political and media is entertainment. This information dies in committee hearings or gets buried in scandal cycles." Nina straightened her shoulders. "I came to you because I watched your testimony recordings. You won't let this go. You'll fight until someone pays attention." She was right. Alan had spent 6 months fighting bureaucracy, begging officials to investigate, shouting into the void. One man with no power and unlimited rage. "What do you want from me?" Alan asked. "Help me expose the truth, but more than that." Nina's expression shifted, uncertainty replacing conviction. "I need to tell you something else, the rest of the truth." They found a quieter corner, and Nina confessed. She was not a junior analyst. She was Dr. Nina Walsh, former weapons developer for the Dominax military. Her adaptive combat systems and AI warfare protocols had made her a rising star in their weapons division. She had designed the targeting systems that made Dominax ships so deadly efficient. "I built tools for killing," she said quietly. "Convinced myself it was defense, that my work protected Dominax citizens. Then they used my systems to destroy a hospital ship, to murder children and doctors and nurses. I realized my genius had been feeding a monster." Alan should have walked away, should have reported her as a war criminal. Instead, he asked, "What can we do? 2 people against an empire." "I've been working on something. A defense system designed specifically to protect non-military vessels from attack, ships like the Florence." Nina pulled up schematics on her data pad. "I call it Protocol Sanctuary, adaptive shields that predict and counter aggressive patterns. It learns from every encounter, becoming more effective." The designs were brilliant. Quantum sensors detecting hostile intent before weapons locked. AI-driven countermeasures that redirected energy rather than absorbed it. A system that could protect civilian convoys without being weaponized. "It's beautiful," Alan admitted. "But how do we build it? We're fugitives with revolutionary technology and no resources." I know someone, Alan said slowly. Retired Admiral David Foster. He ran fleet operations before the war. His daughter died on the Florence. She was a nurse in pediatrics. Will he help us? He lost his child to Dominac's cruelty. He'll help or he'll kill me for asking. Either way, we'll know quickly. They contacted Foster through encrypted channels. The old admiral agreed to meet, his voice rough with old grief and new curiosity. 3 days later, they sat in a private room on a station far from prying eyes. Foster was a hard man made harder by loss. He reviewed Nina's evidence in silence, his jaw tightening with each document. When he finished, he looked at them both with eyes that had seen too much war. You want my help building a defensive system, he asked, or do you want revenge? Justice, Alan said. Protection, Nina said simultaneously. Foster almost smiled. Good, revenge makes you stupid, justice requires patience, protection requires genius. He stood and extended his hand to Nina. I can provide resources, personnel, legitimacy, but I need your word. This technology stays defensive. The moment it becomes a weapon, you've proven Drax right about humanity. Nina shook his hand. You have my word, no offensive capabilities. We protect, we don't punish. Then we have a deal. Foster pulled up a holographic display showing a remote facility in the Kepler belt. I own a private security company. This installation is perfect for development. Isolated, defensible, equipped for advanced engineering. When do we start? Alan asked. Yesterday. Every day we wait, more hospital ships operate without protection. More Kala's situations wait to happen. Foster's expression hardened. We build protocol sanctuary. We expose Drax. We make sure the Florence's dead didn't die for nothing. As they finalized plans, Alan felt something shift inside him. For 6 months, he had been drowning in grief and helplessness. Now he had purpose. He had allies. He had hoped that maybe, somehow, 847 deaths could prevent 8 million more. Outside the window, stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere among them, the Dominac's empire continued its expansion, confident in its power, certain of its impunity. High Commander Drax slept soundly, believing his crime was buried with his victims. He had no idea what was coming. A grieving doctor, a defecting genius, a heartbroken admiral, 3 people who refused to accept that murder was just another day in galactic politics. The Florence had been destroyed because one man valued power over life. Its survivors would prove that one life valued more than power could change everything. They did not know yet about the betrayals coming, the battles ahead, the impossible choices they would face. They only knew that doing nothing was dying slowly. So they chose to build instead. The facility hummed with controlled chaos. Engineers argued over specifications while programmers debugged code at triple speed. Everyone here had lost someone to Dominac's aggression. Some had lost children. Others had lost worlds. Foster had chosen his team carefully, people motivated by grief transformed into purpose. Nina stood at the center of it all, directing the construction of something unprecedented. The first protocol sanctuary platform took shape in the main assembly bay, a lattice of quantum sensors and adaptive processors that looked more like art than weaponry. Because it was not a weapon, that distinction mattered more than anything. The key is prediction, Nina explained to a gathering of engineers. Traditional shields react to incoming fire. By the time they detect a weapon's lock, half the defensive advantage is lost. Protocol Sanctuary identifies hostile intent before weapons charge. It reads energy signatures, flight patterns, communication frequencies. The AI learns what aggression looks like and prepares countermeasures before the first shot fires. A Tullian engineer raised her hand. How does it distinguish hostile intent from defensive posturing? Many species use aggressive displays as negotiation tactics. Excellent question. Nina brought up a simulation. The system analyzes context. Weapon charging combined with approach vectors, communication tone, historical behavior patterns. It builds probability models. A ship can look aggressive without being dangerous. Protocol Sanctuary knows the difference. Alan watched from the observation deck, still amazed by Nina's transformation. The nervous woman he had met at Anchor Point had become a confident teacher, her guilt channeled into creation. She worked 18-hour days, slept 4 hours, and somehow found time to refine every detail personally. Paul Grant, the engineer from the Florence, appeared beside Alan. 6 months had changed him too. He had gained muscle from long hours in fabrication, lost the haunted look that came from watching friends die. Work was therapy for survivors. "She's incredible," Paul said, nodding at Nina. "But I worry she's building something too limited. Defense is noble, but what happens when Dominax develops countermeasures? We should add offensive capabilities, just in case." "That's not what we're doing here," Alan said firmly. "The moment Protocol Sanctuary can kill, we become everything we're fighting against. Even if it means we lose. Especially then, winning by becoming monsters isn't winning." Paul frowned but said nothing more. Alan made a mental note to watch him. Grief made people dangerous in unpredictable ways. The weeks blurred together. The first platform was completed and tested on volunteer civilian ships. The results exceeded projections. A hospital ship equipped with Protocol Sanctuary survived a simulated attack by 3 warships, its shields redirecting every shot harmlessly into space. The attacking ships could not hurt it, but it also could not hurt them. Perfect stalemate, perfect defense. "We need to scale up," Foster announced at a team meeting. 50 platforms operational by next month. Every hospital ship, every civilian transport in human space should have access. "We also need to go public," Alan added. "Release the evidence about the Florence. Show the galaxy what Drax did and what we've built in response." Nina nodded agreement, but her expression troubled Alan. She had been distracted lately, working on something separate from the main project. When pressed, she claimed it was optimization code, nothing important. The betrayal came on a Tuesday. Alarms shrieked through the facility at 300 hours. Alan tumbled from his bunk as armed security rushed past his quarters. He followed them to the data core, where they found Scott Lynn, a programmer who had joined the team 2 months prior, attempting to download Protocol Sanctuary's complete specifications. "I'm sorry," Scott said as security restrained him. "They have my family, my wife, my daughter. Drax will kill them if I don't deliver." Foster arrived, still pulling on his jacket. His face could have been carved from stone. "How long has Dominax known about this facility?" 3 weeks, Scott whispered. "I've been stalling, sending incomplete data, hoping you'd finish before they acted. But Drax knows he's coming." "How long do we have?" 6 hours, maybe less. I'm so sorry." Foster did not waste time on recriminations. He turned to his security chief. "Evacuate all non-essential personnel. Prepare the platforms for emergency transport." "What about Protocol Sanctuary?" Nina asked, her voice steady despite obvious fear. "If Drax captures the facility, he gets everything." "Then we make sure he gets nothing." Foster looked at her. "Can you distribute the system? Upload it somewhere Dominax can't reach?" Nina smiled, and Alan realized she had been planning for exactly this scenario. "I've been building a distributed network. Protocol Sanctuary doesn't need a central location. It can exist across thousands of volunteer ships, each one hosting a small piece of the AI. Destroy one node, the others compensate. The system becomes truly immortal." "How long to complete the upload?" 4 hours if we start now." "Do it, everyone else pack what you can carry. We're ghosts by dawn." The facility transformed into organized chaos. Engineers backed up research. Security teams prepared defensive positions in case Dominax arrived early. Nina worked at a terminal, her fingers flying across controls as she uploaded humanity's greatest defensive achievement to a network of volunteer vessels scattered across known space. Alan helped where he could, carrying equipment, comforting frightened staff, trying not to think about Dominac's warships closing in. Scott Lynn sat in a secured room, weeping for his family and his betrayal, trapped between impossible choices. 3 hours into the evacuation, sensors detected incoming vessels. Dominac's cruisers, 3 of them approaching fast. "Nina, how much longer?" Foster demanded. 20 minutes. The upload is at 92%. "We don't have 20 minutes." "Then buy me what we have." Foster made a decision that would define him. All personnel to evacuation ships. Security, hold them as long as you can. Nina, Alan, Paul, you're with me. We finish this upload even if we have to do it from an escape pod. The Dominac ships opened fire while still at extreme range. But something unexpected happened. 12 civilian ships in the sector, all equipped with early protocol sanctuary platforms, moved to intercept. Medical vessels, cargo haulers, even a passenger liner. They positioned themselves between the facility and the attacking warships. Their shields activated in perfect synchronization. Protocol Sanctuary linked them into a defensive network, each ship reinforcing the others. When Dominac's weapons fired, the coordinated shields caught every shot and redirected the energy harmlessly into empty space. The Dominac's commanders must have been baffled. They were fighting an enemy that refused to shoot back but could not be hurt. Every tactical doctrine they knew became useless against an opponent that only defended. "Upload complete," Nina announced. "Protocol Sanctuary is live across the network. Even if they destroy every ship here, the system survives." "Then we leave," Foster ordered. "Blow the facility. Leave them nothing but empty rooms." Charges detonated as the last personnel ship cleared the station. The Dominac's warships, frustrated by their inability to harm the civilian vessels, turned their weapons on the facility itself. They reduced it to debris, claiming victory over an abandoned shell. Meanwhile, Foster's ship and its civilian escorts jumped to hyperspace. The Dominacs gave chase briefly, then broke off when more Protocol Sanctuary-equipped vessels appeared to block their pursuit. The hunters had become the frustrated. Safely away, Alan found Nina staring at a display showing network statistics. Protocol Sanctuary was spreading faster than anticipated. Hundreds of ships were volunteering to host nodes. The system was learning, evolving, becoming more sophisticated with every encounter. "We did it," Nina said softly. "Even if they hunt us forever, even if Drax destroys everything we build, Protocol Sanctuary survives." "What happens now?" Paul asked. Foster answered. "Now we release the evidence about the Florence, show the galaxy what Drax did and what we've built in response. Let them decide what matters more, politics or protection." Alan activated the communication system and began the broadcast that would change everything. The evidence, the testimony, the truth about 847 murdered souls, the revelation of Protocol Sanctuary and its purpose. Within hours, the galaxy erupted. Some praised humanity's innovation, others feared it. The Dominac's empire screamed about acts of war and demanded Protocol Sanctuary's shutdown. High Commander Drax appeared on every news channel with an ultimatum: surrender Nina Walsh, deactivate the system, or face total war. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Humanity had to choose: protect its people or appease an empire. Alan looked at Nina and Foster, these unlikely allies bound by grief and determination. "Whatever comes next," he said, "we face it together." Outside the viewport, stars burned with indifferent light. Among them, thousands of ships carried pieces of Protocol Sanctuary, protecting civilians from the violence of those who believed might made right. The Florence had died defenseless. Its legacy would ensure no other hospital ship ever would. Nexus Station floated at the intersection of three galactic territories, neutral ground where civilizations met to argue instead of shooting. Today, representatives from 47 species gathered in the council chamber to decide humanity's fate. The air recyclers struggled against the mix of atmospheric preferences, creating a smell like burning electricity and old fear. Ambassador Rachel Torres represented Earth. She was a career diplomat who had spent 30 years building alliances, and she had never faced a challenge like this. In her briefing files sat two impossible options: surrender Nina Walsh and abandon Protocol Sanctuary to appease the Dominax, or stand firm and risk war. High Commander Drax sat across the chamber, an imposing figure whose decorations spoke of victories humans did not want to imagine. He had come personally, a move that surprised everyone. Tyrants rarely left their fortresses. The council speaker, an ancient graven named Hollis, initiated proceedings with traditional formality. We gather to address the Dominax Empire's grievance against humanity regarding the fugitive Nina Walsh and the defensive system designated Protocol Sanctuary. Drax stood, his voice carrying effortless authority. The facts are simple. Nina Walsh is a war criminal who sold military secrets to enemies of the Dominax. The so-called Protocol Sanctuary contains hidden offensive capabilities. Humanity refuses to surrender the criminal or allow inspection of the technology. This constitutes an act of war. Lies, Torres said calmly. We have evidence that Nina Walsh exposed a deliberate attack on a hospital ship, evidence we are happy to present to this council. Evidence fabricated by a known traitor, Drax countered. The UHMS Florence was smuggling weapons to rebel forces. We acted within military necessity. You murdered 847 healers and patients, Torres said, her voice still calm but her eyes blazing. You destroyed a clearly marked medical vessel to assassinate one diplomat. We have your orders, Commander, signed by you personally. She transmitted the documents to every council member. The chamber fell silent as representatives reviewed Nina's stolen evidence. Communications ordering the Florence's destruction, target assessments of Callas the diplomat, confirmation that the ship's medical status was known and ignored. Drax did not flinch. In war, there are no neutral parties. Callas was planning terrorist attacks. The Florence harbored him willingly. Callas was receiving treatment for radiation poisoning, Torres shot back. Hospital ships treat everyone, including people governments don't like. That's what makes them sacred under Galactic Convention. The Tullian representative activated her translator. The evidence appears damning. However, the Dominax raise valid concerns about Protocol Sanctuary. Hidden offensive capabilities would violate defensive warfare treaties. Then inspect it, Torres offered. Protocol Sanctuary's code is open source. Any qualified expert can verify it's purely defensive. We demand physical access, Drax insisted. Technology can be hidden in ways code review won't reveal. And we refuse, Torres said. Protocol Sanctuary exists as a distributed network across thousands of civilian vessels. Granting you access means granting you the ability to shut down our only protection against your aggression. The chamber erupted in overlapping arguments. Some species supported humanity, remembering their own civilians killed in Dominax expansion. Others feared becoming collateral damage in a war between major powers. The smaller delegations calculated which side would win and adjusted their positions accordingly. While diplomats argued, Nina watched from a secure location light years away. She had insisted on surrendering, facing galactic justice to prove Protocol Sanctuary's legitimacy. Allen and Foster had refused to let her. They'll kill you before you reach the council, Foster had said. Drax won't risk you testifying. He was right, Nina knew it, but watching others fight her battles felt like cowardice. The broadcast shifted to breaking news. A Dominax assassination team had attempted to kill Nina during her transport to Nexus Station. They failed because Protocol Sanctuary-equipped escort ships detected the attack vector and positioned shields accordingly. The assassins were captured alive, carrying orders signed by Drax. The council chamber fell silent as footage played. Dominax agents firing on a diplomatic convoy. Protocol Sanctuary redirecting shots harmlessly. The assassins captured without casualties on either side. And most damning, their orders displayed for the galaxy to see. Drax stood slowly, his expression unreadable. A fabrication. Those men were not under my command. Their genetic markers match Dominax military registry, Tor said. Their weapons are Dominax intelligence issue, and their orders bear your personal encryption signature. For the first time, Drax seemed off balance. He had expected politics and compromise, not evidence and consequences. A new voice entered the discussion. Toles, the graven nurse from the Florence, addressed the council from a medical station where she now worked. Her testimony was broadcast to the chamber. I was there when the Florence died, she said, her translator rendering her words with simple dignity. I watched children burn. I saw doctors killed while performing surgery. I survived because Dr. Reed and Chief Medical Officer Cortez protected others before themselves. High Commander Drax claims military necessity. I ask this council, what military threat does a 7-year-old patient represent? What strategic value is there in murdering healers? Her words landed like physical blows. Other Florence survivors joined the broadcast, a parade of witnesses from multiple species describing the attack in clinical detail. No theatrics, no anger, just truth delivered with devastating simplicity. The council voted. 32 species condemned the Dominax Empire for war crimes. Protocol Sanctuary was declared legal under all defensive warfare treaties. Economic sanctions against the Dominax would begin immediately. Drax was stripped of diplomatic immunity, subject to arrest if he left Dominax space. It was a moral victory and a practical failure. The council stopped short of military intervention. Sanctions were easily circumvented by determined empires. Drax would face no real consequences as long as he stayed home. But something else happened that surprised everyone. Within days of the verdict, civilian vessels from 17 species requested Protocol Sanctuary technology. Nina released it freely, refusing to profit from protection. Suddenly, thousands of ships across the galaxy carried defensive systems that made attacking them pointless. The mathematics of warfare shifted. Aggression became expensive and ineffective. Protection became cheap and universal. Species that had feuded for centuries found themselves cooperating to maintain the defensive network. Allen received reports from medical ships reporting 0 casualties from pirate attacks. Refugee convoys crossing war zones without losses. Civilian transports operating safely in previously deadly territories. The body count was dropping across the entire frontier. We're winning, Foster said, reviewing the statistics. Not through violence, but by making violence obsolete. Drax won't accept this, Nina warned. He's consolidating his forces. Intelligence reports suggest he's building something. She was right. Dominax forces were withdrawing from frontier zones, pulling back to core territories. Ships were being recalled, resources redirected to a single massive project in deep space. Then the images arrived. A weapon platform the size of a small moon, bristling with energy weapons capable of planetary bombardment. The Dominax called it the Hammer. It was designed to destroy worlds, not ships. Protocol Sanctuary could not defend against it. Drax's new message was brutally simple. Every nation hosting Protocol Sanctuary had 1 week to deactivate the system and surrender Nina Walsh. Otherwise, he would demonstrate the Hammer's capabilities on a human colony. New Perth. Population 180,000. The council reconvened in emergency session, but everyone knew the truth. Words would not stop what was coming. Only impossible choices remained. Alan sat with Nina and Foster, reviewing options that all ended in tragedy. "I'll surrender," Nina said quietly. "One life for 180,000. "He'll kill you and destroy New Perth anyway," Foster replied. "Tyrants don't honor bargains." "Then what do we do?" Alan stared at the data pad showing Protocol Sanctuary's evolution. The system had been learning, growing more sophisticated. It predicted attack patterns with 98% accuracy now. It knew what enemies would do before they did it. "What if," he said slowly, "we use that?" Protocol Sanctuary had been recording everything. Every Dominax military transmission in range of its networked sensors, every fleet movement, every encrypted communication between Drax and his commanders. The system was not designed for espionage, but information flowed through space like water, and the AI learned to read patterns in the currents. Nina pulled up the predictive models on a secure terminal. The numbers told a story that made her stomach turn. Drax was not bluffing about the hammer. The weapon would fire in 5 days, not 7. He had moved the timeline forward, expecting humanity to scramble for last-minute negotiations. "New Perth dies in 120 hours," she said, "unless we do something unprecedented." Alan stood beside her, reading the same data. Protocol Sanctuary can predict when and where he'll strike. We evacuate the colony before the attack. Drax destroys an empty world. Evacuate 180,000 people in 5 days. Foster shook his head. The logistics alone are impossible. Only if we're obvious about it. Alan's mind raced through possibilities. What if we call it a training exercise? Routine evacuation drill, testing emergency protocols. We move people off-world gradually, make it look normal. Nina accessed Protocol Sanctuary's predictive algorithms. The AI shows a 73% chance Drax has intelligence assets on New Perth. They'll notice an evacuation. Then we give them something else to notice. Foster started making notes. We announce a diplomatic initiative, peace talks, make it look like we're preparing to surrender. While Drax focuses on negotiation theater, we empty the colony. "Will Ambassador Torres agree?" Alan asked. "She will when she sees these predictions." Foster transmitted the data to Torres through encrypted channels. "Nina, can Protocol Sanctuary guarantee the timeline? You're asking us to bet 180,000 lives on an AI's calculations." Nina hesitated. This was the moment her creation stopped being theoretical. Real people would live or die based on her algorithms. If she was wrong, if the AI miscalculated, children would burn like they had on the Florence. 97% confidence, she said finally. The AI has analyzed 6,000 historical Dominax operations. Drax follows predictable patterns. He'll attack in 120 hours, targeting the colony's central population centers first. Alan saw her doubt despite her confident words. "Nina, you've been carrying the Florences dead for a year. Don't carry New Perth too. We make this decision together." She met his eyes, grateful for the shared burden. "Together then." Ambassador Torres contacted them within the hour. "I can authorize a training exercise, but if we're wrong, if Drax realizes what we're doing, he might accelerate the attack. We could make things worse." "Or we save everyone," Alan countered. "Doing nothing guarantees they die." Torres was silent for several seconds. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of impossible responsibility. "I'll notify the New Perth colonial governor. We have 5 days to perform a miracle." The evacuation began with bureaucratic normalcy that masked desperate urgency. Colonial Administrator Patricia Hayes announced a mandatory evacuation drill, testing protocols for potential natural disasters. Citizens grumbled about the inconvenience but complied. They had no idea they were rehearsing their own survival. Transport ships arrived in a steady stream, collecting residents in orderly groups. Foster's security company provided coordination, making everything look routine. Protocol sanctuary-equipped vessels formed protective corridors, ensuring safe passage. Drax's intelligence assets on New Perth reported unusual activity, but the cover story held. Humans were known for over-planning. An evacuation drill made sense for a frontier colony. Nothing suggested they knew about the hammer. On day 3, complications emerged. A group of colonists refused to leave, insisting the drill was government overreach. They barricaded themselves in the agricultural district, demanding explanations. Alan volunteered to go down personally. "I'm a doctor. I can talk to them." He shuttled to New Perth's surface, where 47 families had armed themselves and prepared to resist evacuation. Their leader was a farmer named Robert Kent, a man who had spent 20 years building his life on this world. "We're not playing your government games," Kent said, rifle in hand but not pointed at anyone. "This is our home. We have rights." Alan could have told him the truth, could have explained about the hammer, the coming destruction, the desperate race against time. But operational security mattered. If Drax's agents learned that humanity knew about the attack, he might fire early. "You're right," Alan said instead. "This is your home and you have rights. But I'm a doctor who watched 847 people die on a hospital ship because someone decided their politics mattered more than their lives. I'm asking you to trust me for 72 more hours. After that, if you want to come back, I'll help you personally." Something in his voice, the raw honesty of trauma shared, cut through Kent's suspicion. "You were on the Florence. I held children while they died. I watched my chief medical officer sacrifice herself so others could escape. I will not watch more people burn if I can prevent it." Alan met Kent's eyes. "Please, trust me for 3 more days." Kent lowered his rifle. "Everyone on the transports. But doctor, if this is some political stunt, you and I will have words." "Fair enough." By day 5, New Perth was empty. 180,000 people relocated to temporary housing on 3 nearby worlds. The colony sat quiet under its sun, streets empty, homes abandoned, waiting. Drax's hammer arrived exactly on schedule. Protocol Sanctuary's predictions were 99% accurate, missing the actual arrival time by only 17 minutes. The massive weapon platform took up position in high orbit and charged its primary systems. Dominac's broadcasts demanded humanity's surrender, threatened total annihilation, counted down the final minutes before New Perth became an example. Then they fired. Energy weapons scorched the planet's surface. Cities burned. Agricultural zones were vaporized. The devastation was total, methodical, designed to ensure nothing survived. Except nothing was there to kill. Humanity broadcast the truth immediately, released footage of the empty colony, showed the evacuated citizens watching from safety as their homes burned, explained how Protocol Sanctuary's predictive capabilities had warned them days in advance. Drax had destroyed buildings and dirt. He gained nothing. His demonstration of power became a demonstration of impotence. The galaxy's reaction was immediate. Even Dominac's allies were appalled at the waste. Destroying an empty world out of spite revealed Drax not as a strong leader but a petulant tyrant. Support for sanctions increased. Trade agreements were canceled. Dominax found itself increasingly isolated. More critically, Protocol Sanctuary's prediction capabilities became public knowledge. Civilian vessels across the galaxy realized they could anticipate attacks, evacuate before strikes, deny aggressors their victories. Warfare itself was changing, becoming less about destruction and more about futility. Inside Dominac's space, dissent grew. Military officers who had supported Drax's strength now questioned his judgment. Economic pressures from sanctions created shortages. Citizens began asking why their empire was isolated, what they gained from their leaders' cruelty. Resistance movements formed, calling themselves the Free Dominax Assembly. They were led by officers disgusted by the New Perth attack, by citizens tired of authoritarianism, by people who remembered when their empire was respected rather than feared. They contacted humanity through secret channels, requesting protocol sanctuary technology, not to attack Drax, but to protect civilians in the civil war they saw coming. Nina faced her final test. Give her creation to Dominax dissidents, trust former enemies, or refuse and watch their people suffer. Alan stood beside her as she made the choice. You built a shield, let them shield themselves. Even if Drax uses it against us somehow. Especially then, we prove protection works better than punishment, even when it's risky. Nina transmitted Protocol Sanctuary to the Free Dominax Assembly with one condition. It must protect everyone, including Drax's loyalists. No exceptions. Protection was universal, or it meant nothing. The Assembly agreed. Within weeks, Dominax space erupted into civil war, but it was unlike any conflict the galaxy had seen. Both sides protected civilians first. Casualty rates were minimal. The fighting focused on military objectives while Protocol Sanctuary kept non-combatants safe. Drax retreated to his fortress world, surrounded by loyalists, increasingly isolated. His empire was fracturing, and his own weapon of terror had failed to terrify anyone. The galaxy watched a new kind of war, where protection mattered more than destruction, where saving lives counted more than taking them. And somewhere in the frontier, Alan Reed worked in a new hospital ship, the Florence II, treating patients and knowing the original Florence's legacy was not death, but the idea that defense could be smarter, kinder, and ultimately more powerful than any weapon ever built. The fortress world was called Dominax Prime, though locals knew it as the Iron Heart. Drax had retreated here with his remaining loyalists, 50,000 soldiers and their families. Preparing for a siege that might last years, automated defenses ringed the planet. Supply stockpiles could sustain the population indefinitely. The tyrant had built his final redoubt well. Nina stood on the bridge of a small diplomatic shuttle, approaching the planet with only Alan and Toles beside her. No weapons, no armor, just 3 survivors of the Florence coming to face its destroyer. He could kill us the moment we enter range, Toles said, her translator rendering her nervous clicking into steady words. He could, Nina agreed, but his pride won't let him. We're offering him the one thing tyrants crave, an audience for their justifications. They had broadcast their approach openly. 3 people requesting to speak with High Commander Drax. The galaxy watched, millions tuned in to witness either a historic confrontation or 3 fools flying to their deaths. Drax granted them landing permission. His voice over the communication channel carried amusement. Dr. Walsh, Dr. Reed, Nurse Toles, welcome to Dominax Prime. I'm curious what 3 architects of my empire's destruction hope to accomplish with conversation. They landed in a fortress that looked designed to withstand orbital bombardment. Armed guards escorted them through corridors built for war. Everything was gray metal and harsh lights, beauty sacrificed to function. It felt like Drax himself had become architecture. The throne room was spare and cold. Drax sat on a simple chair, surrounded by his senior officers. He looked older than his broadcast suggested, with lines carved by stress and paranoia. A man who had won everything and lost control of it all. You came unarmed, Drax observed, foolish or confident. Neither, Nina said. We came honest. This conversation is broadcast to the entire galaxy. Every word you say, every action you take becomes your legacy. We thought you might want to choose what that legacy is. Drax laughed, a sound like stone grinding. My legacy is ensuring Dominac's strength. I did what was necessary. You destroyed a hospital ship, Alan said quietly. You murdered 847 healers and patients to eliminate one diplomat. Was that necessary? Callas was planning terrorist attacks. The Florence harbored him. Yes, it was necessary. Nina stepped forward, her voice carrying an emotion that surprised everyone, including herself. Regret. I came to apologize, Commander, for my role in creating weapons that enabled your rise, for building systems that made your military so efficient, for contributing to the arms race that convinced you violence was the answer to every problem. Drax's expression flickered with confusion. This was not the confrontation he expected. But I won't apologize for Protocol Sanctuary, Nina continued, because I want to show you what your violence accomplished. She transmitted data to the throne room's displays, statistics from across the galaxy. Civilian casualties in armed conflicts down 72% since Protocol Sanctuary's deployment. Refugee deaths during evacuations reduced by 84%. Hospital ships operating safely in war zones for the first time in recorded history. Your attack on the Florence united the galaxy against you, Nina said. Your cruelty convinced species that had been enemies for centuries to cooperate on protection. You tried to demonstrate strength through destruction. Instead, you demonstrated that destruction is weakness. Pretty words, Drax said. The strong survive, the weak are consumed. That's the only truth that matters. Then why are you losing? Alan asked. Your empire is fractured. Your allies have abandoned you. Your own military turned against you. If strength is truth, what does your current situation say about your strength? Drax stood, anger flashing across his face. I'm losing because sentiment infected my people, because they forgot that mercy is suicide in a hostile galaxy. You're losing because you killed healers, Tolly said, her voice soft but carrying. Because you destroyed a hospital ship and the galaxy realized anyone who would do that would eventually turn on them too. You didn't demonstrate strength. You demonstrated that you were too dangerous to trust. The throne room fell silent. Drax's officers shifted uncomfortably. Several looked at their commander with expressions that suggested doubt had been growing for some time. Nina made her offer. The Free Dominax Assembly has requested that we extend Protocol Sanctuary protection to Dominax Prime, to you and your loyalists. We can guarantee your people's safety if you stand down. No execution, no trial, exile on a protected world where you can live out your days in peace. You would protect me, Drax's voice carried disbelief, after everything I've done. Protocol Sanctuary protects everyone, Nina said. That's what makes it different from weapons. It doesn't judge. It doesn't discriminate. It shields human and Dominax, victim and perpetrator, because protection is universal or it means nothing. Drax looked at the displays showing casualty statistics, the changing galaxy. His empire had been built on the principle that violence secured power. Now, he was watching that principle collapse in real time. What guarantee do I have that the Assembly won't execute me the moment I surrender? My word, Nina said. And more importantly, Protocol Sanctuary's code. The system is programmed to protect you regardless of political pressure. It can't be overridden by revenge or anger. You'll be as safe as any hospital ship. The silence stretched. Drax's officers watched him. The galaxy watched through broadcasts. History waited to see if a tyrant could choose survival over pride. Finally, Drax reached for the data pad Nina had brought. He reviewed the terms, the guarantees, the future being offered. When he looked up, something had changed in his expression. Not redemption, but resignation. I accept, on one condition. My people, the loyalists who followed me, they receive the same protection. No reprisals, no punishment for their service. Agreed, Nina said immediately. Protection for everyone. Drax issued orders to his commanders. Stand down. Deactivate defenses, prepare for peaceful transition. Some officers looked relieved, others looked betrayed, but none disobeyed. The Dominax Civil War ended not with a final battle, but with 3 people and a conversation. The Free Dominax Assembly took control peacefully, beginning the long work of rebuilding their civilization on principles of cooperation rather than domination. 3 years later, Alan stood on the bridge of the Florence II, the newest hospital ship designed from scratch with integrated protocol sanctuary. They were responding to a distress call in the frontier zones, where a civilian transport had encountered pirates. Protocol Sanctuary activated automatically, coordinating with nearby vessels to create an impenetrable defensive web. The pirates' weapons fired uselessly against adaptive shields. Local security captured them without casualties. Even the pirates survived unharmed, the system protecting everyone equally. The rescued transport's captain contacted the Florence II personally. She was young, maybe 25, with the distinctive features of Dominax heritage. "Thank you," she said. "My grandfather was at New Perth the day it burned. He was one of Drax's officers who defected when he saw what we'd become. He tells me stories about the day humans evacuated an entire colony just to deny a tyrant his victims. Says it changed everything." Alan smiled. "Your grandfather was right. It did change everything, though not the way anyone expected." After the call ended, Alan recorded a log entry. He thought about the Florence, about 847 people who died trying to heal, about how their deaths had rippled outward in ways Drax never anticipated, creating unity instead of fear, innovation instead of submission. He thought about Nina, who had disappeared from public life but was rumored to be working on new projects, always focused on protection. About Foster, whose daughter's death had been transformed into scholarships for medical personnel from all species. About Tolley's, training new nurses in the art of healing across cultural boundaries. The memorial wall in the Florence II listed every name from the original ship. Below their names, a counter updated constantly. Lives saved by Protocol Sanctuary, currently reading 2,847,293. The number climbed while Alan watched. 3 million lives protected by a system born from the deaths of 847. A shield created by a genius who learned that the deadliest response to violence was making it obsolete. Alan touched the memorial wall gently. "We honored your mercy with mercy," he whispered, "and it changed the galaxy." Outside the viewport, stars burned cold and beautiful. Among them, over 100,000 vessels carried Protocol Sanctuary protection. Species that had been enemies now coordinated defenses. Children grew up in a galaxy where hospital ships meant safety, not targets. Drax had wanted to be remembered as the tyrant who demonstrated strength through destruction. Instead, he was remembered as the fool who united the galaxy against him, who proved that cruelty was weakness, who learned too late that protection scaled better than violence. Nina Walsh had wanted to redeem herself for building weapons. She succeeded by building something that made weapons irrelevant. The Florence had been destroyed to silence one diplomat. Its legacy was a galaxy learning to value protection over punishment, defense over offense, life over pride. Alan smiled as the Florence II accelerated toward its next patient, its next emergency, its next chance to prove that healing was stronger than hurting, that shields were mightier than swords, that the best way to win a war was to make violence pointless. The galaxy had learned, not from speeches or treaties or noble declarations, but from 847 deaths that refused to be meaningless, from 3 survivors who refused to answer cruelty with cruelty, from one genius who understood that the greatest weapon was making weapons obsolete. Protection had become revolutionary, defense had become unstoppable, and somewhere in the mathematics of warfare, humanity had discovered the most powerful truth of all, that saving lives mattered more than taking them, always and forever.